Stanley stopped stamping the frog on their bench planes a certain way in 1961. Before that date, the casting is heavier, the mouth is tighter, and the second-hand price is roughly 4 times higher. Most of them are sitting in garages right now, underneath a tin of old screws, looking like nothing. That's not a curiosity. That's 40 years of watching people walk past money because they couldn't see past the rust. I've done it myself. Cost me a tray of Stanley 71 router planes I'd sold for 2 quid each before I understood what they were. So everything I'm going to tell you here comes from that kind of expensive education, not from a book. 10 tools. All of them could be in your garage right now. All of them are routinely sold for pennies at car boots, left in charity shop bins, or worse, thrown out entirely. By the time we're done, you'll have enough to spend 20 minutes in any shed and know whether what you're looking at is rubbish or retirement money. Let's start, though, with the thing that puts most people off before they've even picked anything up. Rust is a filter. That's what my Uncle Derek used to say on Wolverhampton Market, and I've never found a better way to put it. He didn't mean ignore it. He meant use it. Because rust is information, and if you read it right, it tells you almost everything you need to know before you've touched a single mark. Here's the practical version of that. There are 2 kinds of surface rust on an old tool. The first is thin, reddish-brown, almost powdery. It sits on top of the metal like a coat. That's age rust. That's what iron does when it's been left alone for 30, 40, 60 years in a garage or a shed. It means the tool has not been used, and more importantly, it means the tool has not been messed with. Underneath that coat, 9 times out of 10, you'll find sound metal, clear stampings, and original surfaces that haven't been ground or wire-wheeled by someone who didn't know what they had. The second kind is pitted, black, deep. It's eaten into the casting. That's wet rust, usually from a damp environment, and it does genuinely reduce value because it damages the working surfaces that matter. A plain sole full of deep pits is a problem. A plain frog with surface bloom is not. So the rule is this: don't skip anything with the first kind. The thin reddish coat is almost always removable. Fine oil and a cloth on most surfaces, a little careful work with very fine wire wool where you need it, and what's underneath is often pristine by old tool standards. Dealers know this. That's why they pick through boxes that most people dismiss as a heap of junk. There's one more thing worth saying here, and I'll come back to it properly later. Don't clean anything before you've identified it. That's the rule Derek drummed into me, and I ignored it with those router planes, and I paid for it. Identification first, every time. The wrong cleaning method on the wrong tool is the fastest way to turn something worth £300 into something worth 30. Keep that in your head as we go through the list. Number 10. Old hand saws, specifically Disston and Spear and Jackson. Hand saws look like hand saws. To most people at a car boot, they all look the same. Long, possibly bendy, probably rusty. Definitely not interesting. And most of them aren't, to be fair. A no-name panel saw from a 1970s hardware shop is worth very little. But the name on the medallion, that brass disc screwed into the top of the handle, changes everything. Disston were American, but their saws flooded the British market through most of the late Victorian and Edwardian period, and they're highly sought after by tool collectors on both sides of the Atlantic. Look for D8, D12, D23 in the etching on the plate. The earlier the saw, the more ornate the etching. Pre-1900 Distons have an eagle and fine scroll work that's quite unmistakable once you've seen it once. A good example in usable condition, original handle, no chips to the plate, will fetch £40 to £80 on the specialist market. Rarer patterns, the D100 or crosscut saws in larger sizes, go higher. Spear and Jackson are a Sheffield firm, still operating in name, but the old pre-war examples, look for guaranteed warranted on the plate and the Sheffield mark, are a different proposition entirely. The steel is better, the taper grinding is proper, and collectors use them. £20 to £50 for a good one. Not huge money, but not the 50 pence most people charge. The handle is important too. Original beech or applewood handles, uncracked, with all the brass screws present, that's full value. A replaced handle or a crack through the grip cuts it significantly. So when you pick up a saw, check the medallion first, then run your thumb along the grip for cracks. Number 9. Chisels, specifically Marples, Ward, and Buck Brothers. Loose chisels are everywhere. They turn up in every box, every tackle tray, every tool roll abandoned at the back of a garage. Most of them are unmarked or marked with names that don't mean anything. Post-war trade chisels with soft steel and no collector following. Those are worth £1 or £2 each, but get your eyes on the shoulder of the blade, just below where the handle meets the metal. That's where the maker's mark lives on a quality chisel. William Marples of Sheffield put out some of the finest chisels made in the English-speaking world through the mid-Victorian period right up to the 1930s. Their Hibernia and Shamrock ranges, both marked on the blade, are particularly well regarded. A full set in original handles, matching, all stamped. That's not a shelf find, that's a real score. Sets of 6 or 8 go for £80 to £150 on the Wright forum. Individual examples in good sizes, say a 3/4 inch or 1 inch firmer, fetch 8 to 15 each. Ward and Payne are another Sheffield firm worth knowing. Their blades carry a W&P mark and often have a small crowned stamp. Similar price range to Marples. Buck Brothers were American, Providence, Rhode Island, and their chisels turn up in British garages more than you'd expect, given the export trade of the period. Buck Brothers tools in original condition are keenly hunted by American collectors, which drives the price. A decent Buck Brothers socket chisel in an original handle, clean stamp, can go for £20 to £40 even on this side of the Atlantic. The handles matter here even more than on saws. Original boxwood or beech handles with the original ferrule intact. No split, as that's full value. Replaced handles reduce it. Chisels that have been reground aggressively, you can tell because the bevel is very short and the primary angle looks wrong, have also lost some appeal, though they're still usable tools. Number 8. Adjustable spanners, specifically early Bahco and King Dick. These are the sort of thing people use until they fall apart, which is why the good early ones are harder to find than they should be. But they do turn up, because the best ones were made so well they didn't fall apart. Bahco is a Swedish firm, and their pre-war adjustable spanners, look for Bahco stamped into the head, sometimes with a patent number, are collected seriously in Scandinavia and increasingly here. A large Bahco in the 8-inch to 12-inch range, original finish, clear stamp, jaw mechanism smooth, £40 to £70 isn't unusual. The trick is recognizing the early examples, which have a slightly different jaw profile and a more complex patent stamp than the post-war ones. King Dick is a Birmingham firm, and they're one of those names that still exists, but had a golden period from roughly the 1920s to the 1950s. The spanners from that period have better steel and tighter machining than the later stuff. Look for the Crown and Shield mark and the Birmingham stamp. £20 to £50 for a good large example. They're not hard to find, they're just not recognized. With any adjustable spanner, the test is the jaw. Open it fully, close it, feel for play. A worn jaw reduces value. A jaw with no slop and a clean worm gear is what you want. The adjustment should feel positive, not vague. So that's the first 3. Common tools, common garages, but the right names push all of them well above what they look like. The next group is where the gap between an unmarked tool and a named one starts to get genuinely significant. Number 7. Spokeshaves, specifically Record and Preston. A spokeshave is a small, two-handled plane used for shaping curved work. They look modest. The body is maybe 5 or 6 inches across, 2 handles sticking out sideways, a small blade in the middle. Most people who find one have no idea what it is, which is part of why they're priced wrong so often. Record made several patterns. The 151 flat face and the 151R round face are the standard ones and worth a few pounds each in good order. But the 060 and 061, the adjustable mouth spokeshaves with a screw adjuster for the blade, are a different matter. Those were only made for a limited period. They're significantly harder to find, and they're worth £40 to £80 each in good condition. The adjuster mechanism is the tell. If the spokeshave has a screw adjustment visible at the front of the body, rather than just a blade dropped in loose, look it up before you price it. Edward Preston and Sons of Birmingham are the more serious collector's name. Preston made spokeshaves of real quality in the late Victorian and Edwardian period. Look for E. Preston and Sons, and sometimes a pattern number stamped into the body. Preston spokeshaves with original blades and no cracks to the casting go for £60 to over £100 among hand tool collectors. The firm was eventually absorbed into record in the 1930s, which is why early Preston stamped tools are distinct from record ones. The condition check on a spokeshave. Look at the sole, the flat face that slides along the wood, for deep pitting, which matters because a pitted sole is hard to fettle. Check the blade slot for any cracking in the casting. And make sure the blade is original to the tool, not a replacement from a different pattern. Mismatched blades reduce value. Number 6. Braces, specifically Ultimatum braces, and early Marples examples. A brace is the U-shaped hand drill, the one you crank in a circle to drive a bit. By the 20th century they'd become fairly standard items, and a plain steel brace from a 1950s hardware catalogue is not worth much. But go back further and go up market, and you're in different territory. The William Marples Ultimatum brace is probably the single most recognizable high-value hand tool in British collecting. It has an ebony or rosewood infill in the head, and the sweep, the U-shaped part, is brass-framed and usually beautifully made. It was a prestige tool even when it was new, in the 1860s to 1890s, and it looks it. Marples and Ultimatum are usually stamped on the head. A complete example in sound condition, chuck working, head intact, no cracking in the infill, will fetch £150 to over £300, depending on size and condition. A rare variant or an unusually large sweep goes higher. I pulled one of these out of a clearance house in Shropshire about 12 years ago. It was in a box with a dozen plain steel braces, all priced together at £3 the lot. I paid the £3, sold the Ultimatum for £220 on a specialist forum, and left the rest of the braces for whoever wanted them. The woman selling the lot had no idea. She thought I'd done well on the box in general. I hadn't the heart to explain. Early Marples braces without the Ultimatum designation, the ones with just a brass-trimmed head and a good chuck, are still worth £30 to £60 in good order. The chuck is important. It should hold a bit securely and release cleanly. A worn or damaged chuck reduces value substantially. Beyond Marples, look at Frey, another Sheffield name, and at Sheffield-made braces with ornate head designs. Any brace with a decorative pattern to the head casting, rather than plain steel, is worth investigating. Number 5. Combination squares, specifically Starrett and Early and Wright. A combination square is a precision measuring tool, a ruled blade that slides through a cast-iron head, with a level vial in the head and a scribe in the end. A good one is a pleasure to use. A Starrett is the benchmark. L.S. Starrett of Massachusetts made, and still make, precision tools. But the pre-war examples, look for the older style engraving on the blade, the brass adjustment nut, and the name Starrett on the head, are significantly better than the later production. A Starrett combination square in good order, with the original blade clearly graduated, level vial intact, no slop in the head, £60 to £120, depending on size and completeness. Sets with the centre head and the protractor head included go higher, sometimes to £200 if everything is original. Moore and Wright are a Sheffield firm, and their combination squares are nearly as well regarded among British users. Look for M&W Sheffield on the head. Condition test. Slide the blade in and out. It should move smoothly under the clamp pressure with no wobble. Wobble in the head is the killer for value on these. It means wear, and it means the tool no longer does its job to the standard that makes it collectible. A tight, accurate square with a good level vial is worth real money. A loose, vague one is worth very little regardless of the name. These turn up in estate sales quite often because they were the sort of tool a serious amateur kept in a cloth roll at the back of a drawer. They look technical and modest at the same time, and at a car boot they tend to go for £5 to £10, if they sell at all, which is a shame, because £5 to £10 for a good Starrett is giving money away. Now, before we get into the top 4, I need to stop and tell you something important. Because everything from here up carries serious money if it's right, and a lot of people destroy that money in the 30 minutes between finding the tool and deciding to sell it. I'll tell you exactly how I learned this, because the lesson is more use than the theory. When I was in my mid-20s, I found a tray of Stanley 71 router planes at a house clearance outside Wolverhampton. Lovely things. The 71, a cast-iron base, 2 handles, an adjustable fence, and a blade that drops down through the middle to clean the bottom of a groove. Stanley made them from the early 1900s through to the 1970s, and the early ones are significantly more valuable than the later ones. The difference is in the casting marks, the fence design, and a few other details that I now know and then didn't. At the time I saw rust and I saw old tools and I thought, clean them up, they'll sell better. So I got a wire wheel on the angle grinder and I went at them, 10 minutes each. By the time I was done, they looked like new tools, bright metal, no rust, shiny. I sold them for £2 each. I thought I'd done well. Sometime later I saw an unmolested Early Stanley 71 sell at a tool auction for £68. Original surfaces, original Japanning where it survived, light surface rust on the bare metal, nothing touched. And I sat there doing arithmetic in my head that I did not enjoy. What I'd done wrong was threefold. First, I'd removed all the surface detail that lets a buyer date the tool, the Japanning finish, the casting texture, the patina that accumulates over decades and can't be faked. Second, I'd used an angle grinder wire wheel, which left circular scratch marks on the casting that a knowledgeable buyer will immediately identify as aggressive cleaning and will reduce their offer accordingly. Third, and most importantly, I'd cleaned before I'd identified. I had no idea what I had, so I had no idea what I was destroying. The rule Derek gave me, which I ignored to my cost, is this. The muck is part of the record. It tells the story of the tool's age and its life. Some of it should come off. You need to be able to read the markings, and a buyer wants to see the metal is sound, but you take it off gently, in stages, with oil and cloth and patience, not with power tools and impatience, and you do it only after you know what you've got. For everything in the top 4 that follows, the cleaning rule applies harder than anywhere else, because these tools have the highest ceilings and the most to lose from being handled wrong. A Stanley combination plane in original condition with surviving Japanning is worth 3 times what the same plane is worth cleaned to bare metal. A record shoulder plane with its original finish and the correct blade is worth significantly more than one that's been polished up before sale. So, identify, then decide what to clean, then clean gently, then sell to the right buyer. That's the sequence. Keep it? Number 4. Record shoulder planes, specifically the 073 and 311. A shoulder plane is a specialized bench plane used for trimming tenon shoulders and fitting joints. The blade runs the full width of the plane, right to the edge, which is what makes it useful, and also what makes a good one hard to manufacture. Record made several patterns, and 2 of them are the ones you want to know. The Record 073 is the large shoulder plane in their range, a heavy, precise tool with a full-width blade and a good adjustment mechanism. Early examples, pre-1960, are the most sought after. Look for the casting marks on the body. Early 073s have a different rib pattern on the sides and a different blade adjustment screw compared to the later production. A clean early 073 with original blade and no damage to the sole, which is the bottom of the plane and needs to be flat and free of deep pits, goes for £80 to £150. I've seen them go higher on a good day. The 311 is Record's bullnose and shoulder plane in one. It has a removable front section so it can work right into a corner. Early 311s are less common than the 073 and price accordingly. A complete early 311 with both the full nose and bullnose front sections present, some come with only one, is worth £100 to £200 in good order. A 301 missing the bullnose section is worth considerably less because the completeness is most of what collectors are paying for. For both tools, the condition flags are flatness of the sole, condition of the blade, original to the plane, not replaced, and whether the adjustment mechanism is functional with no stripped threads. Stripped threads on the adjuster are the single biggest value killer on record planes, and they're common because people over-tighten. Check the adjuster with a light touch. Number 3. Early Stanley combination planes, the 45 and the 55. Now, we're getting into the territory where the numbers change character. Stanley made combination planes, tools that could do the work of dozens of specialist planes, with interchangeable blades and adjustable fences and depth stops from the 1880s onwards. The two names you need to know are the 45 and the 55. The Stanley 45 is the more common of the two, and common is relative here. It's a combination plough, philister, dado, rabbit, and sash plane all in one. It came in a fitted wooden box with a set of blades, a fence, depth stop, and various rods and attachments. The value depends almost entirely on completeness and age. A complete early 45, pre-1920. Look for the older style casting and the nickel-plated rather than chrome-plated fittings, with its original box, all blades present, fence intact, in good working order, is worth £200 to £400. Without the box, or with blades missing, it falls significantly. Each missing blade is money off. The Stanley 55 is rarer and more complex. It was billed as a universal plane when it launched in 1897, and the claim isn't entirely wrong. It has 4 sections and can theoretically replicate the profile of almost any moulding plane. A complete 55 in its original wooden box with all blades, and there are a lot of blades. A full set has over 50 is a serious find. Values for a complete, early, all-original 55 run from £500 to over £1,000 on the Wright market. I've seen exceptional examples with all original accessories go higher at specialist auctions. The word complete is doing the heavy lifting in both those valuations. Blades missing, box missing, fence damaged, screws replaced, each one chips the number. So when you find a 45 or 55, before you do anything else, count what's there. The box will have shadows in the felt where each blade should sit. Count the shadows and count the blades. And do not clean the blades. Original finish on the Stanley blades, they were japanned, like the plain body, is a significant part of the appeal. A blade that's been wire-wheeled is a blade that's been devalued. Number 2. Certain Marples patterned chisels. Full sets, original rolls. I mentioned Marples earlier at number 9 for individual chisels, but a full set in an original canvas or leather roll is a different proposition entirely, and it deserves its own entry near the top of this list. William Marples and Sons made several ranges of patterned firmer and bevel-edge chisels through the Victorian and Edwardian period. The Shamrock, the Hibernia, the Punch, and when those chisels turn up in their original sets, in the rolls or boxes they were sold in matching sizes with original handles and ferrules, the value is substantially greater than the sum of the parts. A full set of 8 Marples bevel-edge chisels in original blue canvas roll, all in matching boxwood handles, all with clear blade stamps, ranging from 1/8 of an inch to 1 inch. That's £300 to £500 to the right buyer. The roll itself adds value, the matching handles add value, the sequential sizes add value. Break the set, sell the chisels individually, and you might clear 150. Keep it together, and you more than double that. The condition check. Handles should all be the same material. Mismatched handles suggest replacements, which reduces value. Ferrules should all be present, no splits. Blades should all carry clear stamps without the brand being ground away. A chisel that's been ground so aggressively that Marples is half missing is worth less than one with the full stamp, even if the ground one has a better edge. These roll up quite small and look modest. They turn up in tool drawers, in the backs of tool chests, occasionally in cloth bags. The roll is often more worn than the tools inside. Don't judge by the outside. Number 1. The infill plane, and specifically the Norris. Here's the tool that people give away. An infill plane is a type of bench or shoulder plane made in Britain from roughly the 1830s to the mid-20th century. The body is metal, usually steel or gunmetal, and the interior, the infill, is hardwood, typically rosewood or ebony. The blade is bedded at a higher angle than a standard bench plane, which gives a quality of cut that woodworkers still argue is unsurpassed by anything made since. Norris of London is the name. Thomas Norris and Son, based in Borough, London, made infill planes from the late Victorian period through to the 1940s. They were expensive when new, bought by pattern makers, instrument makers, cabinet makers who needed the finest possible surface, and they are dramatically expensive now. A Norris A1 panel plane in good condition, the blade works, the infill is sound, the sole is flat, is worth £1,000 to £2,000. A rare pattern, larger size or documented provenance pushes that higher. I have seen Norris planes sell at specialist tool auctions for £3,000 and above for exceptional examples. Now here is the part that matters for you. Norris planes look, to someone who doesn't know what they are, like a heavy, slightly odd metal plane with a wooden grip. They don't have the familiar Bailey pattern silhouette of a Stanley. They're heavier than they look. The sole is often steel, which shows age rust readily. The infill wood is dark and can look shabby if the surface is worn. In short, they look like a tool that's seen better days, not like something worth £1,000. This is why they get given away. I know a dealer in the Midlands who bought a Norris A5 shoulder plane at a charity shop in Worcestershire for £1.50. £1.50. The shop had no idea. He sold it for £900. So how do you spot one? First, the infill. If a plane has hardwood filling the interior of the body, not just a wooden tote and knob bolted to a metal casting, but actual wood filling the bed and the front, look very carefully at the sole. Norris's is typically stamped into the toe of the sole, sometimes with a pattern number and London mark. The stamp can be faint under surface rust, which is why the oil and cloth approach matters here more than anywhere else. Other names to know in infill planes: Spears of Ayr, who made high-quality infill planes in Scotland from the mid-Victorian period; Preston, who made infill shoulder planes; and Matheson of Glasgow. All of these are valuable. None of them are the everyday find that a Stanley or Record is, but they come up, and when they do, they look like nothing to the uninformed eye. The test for an infill plane when you find one: lift it. They are heavy for their size, noticeably so. The metal body is thick steel or gunmetal, not the thinner casting of a Bailey pattern plane. That weight is the first signal. Then look for the infill wood and check the sole for a stamp. If you see Norris or Spears or Matheson, put it down carefully, don't clean it, and look up what you have before you do anything else. So now you can identify them. What you do next matters almost as much as what you found. The worst thing you can do with a valuable old tool is take it to a general car boot, slap a £5 sticker on it, and sell it to the first person who looks knowing. Because the people who look knowing at car boots are often dealers, and dealers are not paying full value. That's their job. It's nothing personal, but you should be doing better. General auction rooms are nearly as bad for hand tools. The kind of auction room that sells house clearances, furniture, crockery, the odd box of tools, doesn't have the specialist knowledge or the specialist buyer base to get you what a Norris or a Stanley 55 is actually worth. I know a man in Shropshire, a decent bloke, who inherited a good collection of early Stanley planes from his father. Took the lot to a local auction, reasonable place, competent auctioneer. The collection went for £280 in total. I saw the photographs afterward. There was a Stanley 55 in there, near complete. On its own it was worth £400 on the specialist market. He got less for the whole collection than that one plane should have fetched. The right venues are specific. For UK hand tools, the most reliable specialist route is the Tool and Trades History Society, TARTHS, whose members include serious collectors who know exactly what they're looking at and are prepared to pay for it. Their network is your best starting point. Similarly, the online forum UK Workshop has a tool sales section where knowledgeable buyers are active and where a properly described and photographed Norris or Stanley combination plane will attract serious interest. For auction rooms with genuine tool specialism, Hannam's Auctioneers in Dorking run periodic specialist tool sales that attract the right buyers. Jim Biddick and other specialist tool dealers are also known quantities. They pay dealer prices, which is less than private sale prices, but they're fair and they know what they have. If you're not sure of a valuation, asking a specialist dealer for an opinion is worthwhile even if you don't sell to them. eBay is complicated. The platform reaches a large audience, and a well-described Norris with good photographs will find buyers. But you need to know enough to describe it accurately, and you need to price it properly. Underpricing on eBay is just as easy as at a car boot, and the buyers who watch those listings know it. If you're uncertain, an eBay listing with a proper reserve and a buy it now at the correct price, with the tool listed under its correct name and pattern number, is defensible. An auction with no reserve on a tool you can't identify is not. Photograph everything before anything else. Sole, sides, toe, heel, blade, any stampings or patent marks. Good photographs make identification easier. You can post them to specialist forums for opinion before you commit to a price or a venue. That step costs you nothing and can be worth hundreds of pounds. So here's where we land. The price of an old tool is almost never in the metal itself. It's in the mark on the metal. Turn it over. Read every stamp, every patent number, every maker's name. Read the toe of the sole. Read the shoulder of the blade. Read the medallion on the saw handle. The stamp is the price. Everything else follows from that. Before you sell anything that looks old and handmade and possibly interesting, spend 20 minutes with it and a cloth dampened with a bit of light oil. Clear the surface rust gently. Read what's there, then look up the name. You might have something ordinary. You might have a Norris. If you've got an old tool in your garage right now, whatever it is, I'd genuinely like to know. What's the oldest thing in there, and have you ever looked up the name stamped on it? Drop it in the comments. Some of the answers I've seen on here over the years have been remarkable, and I mean that. The next lot I'll be going through is tackle boxes, fishing kit, old reels, old rods, the sort of thing that turns up at car boots for nothing. Same principle applies. The names matter, the stampings matter, and the difference between a hardy and a no-name reel is the difference between pocket change and a very good day. We'll get into all of that next time.